Chapter 2356, Primal Void Stone Room. Chapter 2356, Primal Void Stone Room. The crimson sunset radiated such a colorful glow that it illuminated the entire meditation room. Its aura was just as intense as that of Great Lord-ranked monsters. The strengthening effect improved it so drastically. Shifeng read the crimson sunset statistics in shock. He was already overjoyed that he had successfully produced the advanced mana set equipment. He hadn't actually expected to trigger the black steel insignias effect as well. Now, the crimson sunset's basic attributes could practically rival a Tier 3 mana set equipment. Mana equipment wasn't like ordinary equipment. It traded durability, which would continue to deplete with each use, in exchange for greater performance. Because of this, players could exhibit extraordinary strength with mana equipment. If a level 100, Tier 2 Expert wore Tier 2 Advanced Mana Set equipment, they could solo a level 100 High Lord. Normally, a Tier 2 Expert couldn't even solo a level 100 Lord and would need a full party to take one down. This was why Shifeng was so determined to produce the Crimson Sunset. Zero Wing already had an adequate number of peak combatants, but when it came to lower-grade experts, the guild was no match for the various superpowers. If he could arm Zero Wing's core experts with the Crimson Sunset, their combat power would undergo a qualitative transformation, and they'd only be weaker than true Tier 3 experts. Now that he had the experience of producing the Crimson Sunset, Shifeng began to mass-produce the mana set equipment. His production success rate was still quite low, but one Crimson Sunset would instantly arm Zero Wing with a Tier 2 expert that had the combat power to rival peak experts. Not even the various superpowers were capable of accomplishing this feat. Furthermore, the Crimson Sunset would be immensely helpful to players when they challenged their Tier 3 promotion quests. Following which, Shifeng forged 22 Crimson Sunsets, only stopping when he received a message from Melancholic Smile. She had contacted him to inform him that the second batch of Primal Void Stones had been retrieved from the shared warehouse. Blue Bay City's members had also added the third batch to the shared warehouse. They're finally here. After reading Melancholic Smile's message, Shifeng decided to take a break from the Crimson Sunset's production for now. It took 24 hours to transfer items through the shared warehouse. Although the shared warehouse could only hold 200 Primal Void Stones at a time, it was the most convenient method for transferring non-bag space items that Zero Wing had right now. If he had to rely on the Crimson Dragon flying ship, it would take more than 24 hours to receive a shipment from Blue Bay City. With 2 transfer cycles, White River City's Candlelight trading firm had 400 Primal Void Stones in stock. Although 400 Primal Void Stones were far from enough to construct a building, they'd be more than enough to build a small room. A small room might not be useful for combat players, but it would be for lifestyle players. They didn't need a lot of workspace, after all. Shifeng then contacted Melancholic Smile and had her deliver the Primal Void Stones to one of the small reception rooms on the top floor, and he began to modify the room. Shops in NPC cities had fixed layouts for their workshops, and players weren't allowed to modify them, but the reception rooms and offices were a different story. Since these rooms didn't have a specific function, players could modify them as they wished. To protect the Primal Void Stone's secret, Shifeng saw to the modifications himself. Fortunately, one didn't need to be an architect to complete the task. Finally, after more than a dozen hours of work, Shifeng had replaced the walls, ceiling, and floor with Primal Void Stones, spending 376 stones in total. If Sindhart saw the room, he'd have a heart attack. If they had sold those stones, they would have earned nearly 20,000 gold. Even the various superpowers would find a 20,000 gold modification to a small reception room to be a stroke of madness. And yet, Shifeng wasn't satisfied. He also set up a mana-gathering magic array within the room, increasing the room's mana density even further. Combined with the Primal Void Stone's mana-gathering properties, the mana in the small reception room was only slightly less dense than in the research workshop. These Primal Void Stones are amazing. This is only a small room, yet it can improve a player's mental strength by 20%. If I construct an entire building, I can likely increase that boost to 30%, Shifeng thought as he sensed the improvement to his mental fortitude. If he could train in such an environment, He might even be able to execute a perfect lightning flash, even if he were still at Tier 2. The primal void stones were far more effective than he had expected. Tools that could improve a player's mental strength by 10% in God's domain already sold for astronomical amounts of money. One might not even be able to exchange a fragmented legendary item for such a tool. However, a primal void stone room could improve a player's mental strength by 20%. Shifeng finally realized why the various superpowers in the past had reserved their primal void stone houses for their own use, refusing to rent them to outsiders. Once he was satisfied, Shifeng contacted Silent Wonder and requested her presence. Silent Wonder had a huge headache from trying to create her new potion, having reached a bottleneck. She wanted nothing more than to spend the 48-hour day in the research workshop, but upon receiving Shifeng's order, she had no choice but to set aside her research and begrudgingly visit the small reception room in question. Guild leader, this room. After a moment in the small reception room, she was stunned by the sensation of it. Silent Wonder hadn't felt anything in particular when she had first entered the room. She had merely felt a refreshing coolness spread throughout her body, but after 5 seconds, she noticed that her mind was far clearer than before. In addition, her physical control and mana had increased substantially. It's not bad, right? Shifeng asked, chuckling at Silent Wonder's shocked expression. The research workshop can only provide a rough guideline. You'll have to figure out the details on your own. Meanwhile, this room will help improve your control. You can spend time here to learn the techniques and concepts you've struggled with. With this environment, your chances of creating a new recipe should rise to 70% or 80%, right? The room is simply magical. Forget 80%. I'm sure I can create a new recipe if I work in here for the next 4 or 5 days. Silent Wonder excitedly and confidently exclaimed. While in this room, she could finally understand some of the aspects of the droplet of life recipe that had confused her. Moreover, the advanced magic arrays she had struggled with no longer seemed difficult. She was 90% sure that she could draw the necessary arrays to produce the droplet of life now. Good, then. I'll have Melancholic send some alchemy tools up in a moment. If you come across anything you can't figure out in the research workshop, you can come here to figure it out, Shifeng said, not surprised in the least by Silent Wonder's declaration. A room of primal void stones would even be useful to Grandmaster lifestyle players, not to mention Master lifestyle players. With Silent Wonder's talents, it'd be a joke if she couldn't become an advanced master alchemist with the help of this room. Once she had everything she needed, Shifeng stopped bothering Silent Wonder and returned to his own basic meditation room to continue his work with the Crimson Sunset Mana Set equipment. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. With access to the Primal Void Stone Rooms, Silent Wonder completed her promotion to Advanced Master rank in 4 days, becoming the first Advanced Master lifestyle player in the Candlelight trading firm. Meanwhile, Shifeng worked arduously for 5 straight days, leveling up from 103 to 104. His leveling speed was absurdly fast for someone of his level. He had also produced 86 Crimson Sunsets, although he had blown through all of Zero Wing's stockpiled magic crystals. While he'd been busy, Fire Dance, Gentle Snow, Violet Cloud, and Aqua Rose had returned from the Tower of 4 Gods, all 4 now at level 100. Shifeng instructed the 4 women to learn a bronze combat technique using the ocean barrier stones before he sent them off to challenge their Tier 3 promotion quests. Guild leader, Azure's people have arrived. They say they're here to take me to the competition venue. Silent Wonder suddenly contacted Shifeng to inform him. They're here. Shifeng set his tools down. Nodding, he continued, I'll go with you. Chapter 2357_Equipment upgraded. Chapter 2357_Equipment upgraded. You're coming too, guild leader? Silent Wonder asked, a hint of excitement in her voice. Shifeng was Zero Wing's guild leader. He had many things he needed to do every day. She had thought the guild would, at most, send a guild elder or vice guild leader as a show of support for the Azure Chamber of Commerce's competition. She had never thought Shifeng would want to make the trip himself. Azure has the ability to travel between God's domain's main continents. This is a good opportunity to investigate the situation on the Western continent, Shifeng said, nodding. The planar passage's activation provided the major powers an opportunity to obtain more resources, but compared to what one could gain from another main continent, the other worlds offered scrap. This was especially true regarding the main continent's merchandise. Reselling such items could offer significant profits. This was also why so many superpowers were so desperate to join the Azure Chamber of Commerce. Azure was one of the few powers in God's domain with the ability to travel between the main continents. Although Zero Wing had no chance of joining Azure right now, it wouldn't hurt to use this competition to get a glimpse of the Western continent. Finding a way to travel between the Eastern and Western continents might be an issue for others, but it was a simple matter for Shifeng. Zero Wing severely lacked funds for many of the guild's needs, especially the development of Zero Wing's territory in the Cold Spring Canyon. As soon as the guild began to develop the area, it would become a bottomless pit that endlessly devoured coins and resources. If Zero Wing relied on Candlelight's current income, it would take a very long time to develop the territory properly. The best solution Shifeng could come up with was to resell Zero Wing's merchandise on the Western continent. Not only would this generate income far more quickly, but it would also generate enough to drive any superpower mad with envy. I'll take care of the necessary preparations, then. Naturally, Silent Wonder was overjoyed that Shifeng wanted to attend the competition with her, and she immediately left to prepare what she'd need for the competition. Oh, right. Come see me later and collect some equipment, Shifeng said. Since Silent Wonder had become an advanced master alchemist, she could produce items with far more speed than before, and as a result, her leveling speed had substantially increased. In fact, she had already reached level 99. However, her equipment was still average, at best. She wasn't even wearing full level 95 equipment. Although Azure's internal competition was a personal affair, Silent Wonder was still a member of Zero Wing. If the Chamber's representatives saw her current equipment, Zero Wing would become a laughingstock. Equipment. When Silent Wonder took a look at her own equipment, she was a little ashamed. Her equipment was pretty shabby. More than half of the items she wore was level 90 equipment, and the few level 95 pieces she had were only secret silver rank. Her equipment might be excellent for ordinary expert players, but she was Candlelight's chief alchemist. For someone of her status, equipment of such quality was like wearing a pauper's rags. After all, the items in Zero Wing's guild warehouse were available to Candlelight's lifestyle players as well. However, to increase her development as an alchemist, she had spent almost all of her GCPs on rare materials. Once Silent Wonder collected her alchemy tools and materials, she promptly made her way to the basic meditation room Shifeng occupied. As she entered the room, Shifeng gestured to the strengthened crimson sunset on the stone table and said, "Here. Give this a try." Since the crimson sunset was basically made of mana stones and magic crystals, it wasn't restricted to a particular class. Once equipped, the set's attributes would automatically adjust to its wearer. This was one of the benefits of mana set equipment. A Tier 2 advanced mana set equipment. Silent Wonder was stunned after inspecting the crimson sunset. She wasn't a stranger to mana set equipment. Some of Zero Wing's members had used such items before, and many of the Candlelight's members had watched on with envy. Mana set equipment was essentially equipment made of pure mana. When equipped, it would increase the mana density around the player, calming and clearing their mind. However, mana set equipment was incredibly rare. The guild didn't have enough to allow its members to purchase it with GCPs. And yet, Shifeng was giving her her own mana set equipment. Moreover, this wasn't any ordinary mana set equipment. It was a 6-piece, Tier 2 advanced mana set equipment. At this stage of the game, not even the various superpowers likely had such a set. Guild leader, this is too precious. I'm only an alchemist. Giving this crimson sunset to me would be a waste. It'd be better if someone else in the guild used it, Silent Wonder said, refusing Shifeng's generosity. If Shifeng had merely offered her level 95 dark gold equipment, it wouldn't be a major issue since it wouldn't be helpful for very long, but that wasn't the case for the crimson sunset. A player could rely on the crimson sunset until they reached level 120. A lifestyle player like her wouldn't be able to make full use of the set equipment. You're our guild's chief alchemist. I can afford to give you such equipment, Shifeng said, chuckling. He then pointed to the pile of equipment in a corner of the room and continued, moreover, our guild has plenty of these sets. Plenty. At first, Silent Wonder was confused, but when she turned to look where Shifeng had pointed, she gaped in shock. More than 20 sets of equipment sat in a pile on a massive stone table in the corner of the room. Every one of those sets looked just like the crimson sunset before her. All right, hurry up and equip it. If we waste any more time, Azure's people will likely grow impatient, Shifeng reminded her when he saw her in a daze. Suddenly, Silent Wonder realized that she didn't understand her guild as well as she had thought. First, he had handed her the droplet of life recipe, and then, Shifeng had shown her that strange reception room. Now, she learned that the guild had a pile of Tier 2 advanced mana set equipment. However, Silent Wonder didn't give the matter much thought. Since Shifeng insisted, she stopped hesitating and equipped the crimson sunset he offered. In seconds, Silent Wonder transformed from a cold, workaholic beauty into a charming, graceful witch surrounded by a layer of dense mana. The crimson robes radiated a faint, bloody mist that gave Silent Wonder a wicked feeling. Wearing the crimson sunset, she looked like a completely different person. Once they were ready, Shifeng and Silent Wonder quickly made their way to White River City's teleportation hall. After arriving at the teleportation hall, they headed toward one of the advanced restaurants located on the second floor. As they entered the restaurant, a level 100 Guardian Knight moved forward to greet Silent Wonder. He looked to be in his early 30s and wore 4 pieces of epic equipment. The Guardian Knight's weakest piece of equipment was even level 95 fine gold rank. Every one of the man's movements seemed natural and weightless. From what Shifeng could tell, this Guardian Knight should only be slightly weaker than Yang Tianxing. Long time no see, second miss, the Guardian Knight respectfully greeted Silent Wonder. Cloud. Why are you here? Silent Wonder was a little surprised to see this Guardian Knight, Cloud Hunter. I thought you've been managing one of the branch guild on the western continent. Has something happened to it? The family's branch guild is fine. The old master was simply worried that you might encounter some problems during your trip, so he sent me to escort you, Cloud Hunter said, shaking his head. He then turned to Shifeng, who stood behind Silent Wonder, and said, however, it seems you would have been safe without me. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU Grandpa is being too cautious. They wouldn't dare move against me during such a crucial time, Silent Wonder said, not feeling surprised by the arrangement in the least. In a slightly prideful tone, she continued, allow me to introduce you. This is my guild leader, Black Flame. Not only is he an intermediate master forger, but he's also Starmoon Kingdom's #1 expert. He's even slain War Blood's commander. If those people dare to attack, they'll find that they've only made a one-way trip. The old master simply wants to ensure your safety. After all, the boundary space we're heading to is the Dark Hills. Azure has stationed some people in the area, but it won't stop anyone with ill intentions, Cloud Hunter said. I understand. Let's set out, then. Silent Wonder nodded. She understood how special an area the Dark Hills was, but Shifeng was a Tier 3 player. Anyone that tried to ambush them would be digging their own grave. Cloud Hunter said nothing more after witnessing Silent Wonder's nonchalant attitude. His task was simply to protect her. Following which, he led Silent Wonder and Shifeng to the Fire Dragon Empire. Chapter 2358, Boundary Space Fire Dragon Empire, Fire Dragon City. Chapter 2358, Boundary Space Fire Dragon Empire, Fire Dragon City. 20 flashes illuminated in the city's teleportation hall. As these flashes faded, players in standardized equipment emerged from the array. The moment these players appeared, they attracted envious, awed looks from many of the building's other occupants. Even the lowest level player in the group was level 99 and wore standardized level 95 dark gold set equipment. Standardized dark gold set equipment couldn't compare to ordinary set equipment of the same level and rank, but its basic attributes were on par with level 95 dark gold equipment. At this stage of the game, most ordinary experts were stuck at level 95 and would be lucky if they had a full set of level 95 secret silver equipment. Not even large guilds' core experts dared to dream of wearing level 95 dark gold equipment. The man leading the group was a level 100 player, and not only did he wear 5 pieces of epic equipment, but he also carried a crimson axe that radiated a chilling aura with an indiscernible rank. The weakest of this man's equipment was level 95 dark gold rank. Even among such high-leveled and excellently geared players, he was conspicuous. While the crowd wondered who these players were, 2 level 99 players with dense life auras approached the group. These two were none other than Cold Memory and South Dream, whom Shifeng had met earlier. "Owl, you actually made a trip here? If your grandfather finds out, he'll definitely scold you," South Dream said, pinching the bridge of his nose as he gazed at the level 100 berserker youth named Burning Owl. Burning Owl was one of South Dream's childhood friends. He was also one of the Azure Chamber of Commerce's vice guild leaders. Apart from the fact that he had his family's support, Burning Owl had earned the position through his superior abilities and talents. "Of course. This is an important day that decides our family's position. How could I miss it?" Burning Owl said, chuckling. "How did it go with my second sister?" "We tried, but Wonder intends to stay with Zero Wing. We have no choice but to ask Silk Moon to join Dark Pursuit," Cold Memory said, frustrated. "However, Zero Wing's guild leader has promised to arm Wonder with the guild's full support." "Zero Wing? Support my second sister?" Burning Owl could not help but frown. "Zero Wing really knows how to take advantage of people. Are they planning on relying on my second sister's identity to claim benefits from Azure? Second sister is too gullible." The Azure Chamber of Commerce's influence stretched across both of God's domain's main continents. Even the various superpowers desperately fought to join the chamber. As for his second sister, she was a free spirit that never cared about the family's matters. Unlike her, Burning Owl constantly managed many of Azure's affairs, which meant he had to deal with the powers that continued to seek a place with Azure. "I am impressed by Zero Wing's ability to nurture lifestyle players. I'm confident that Wonder will perform well in the competition," South Dream added. "Hopefully, that's the case, but if Zero Wing's guild leader tries to take advantage of my second sister, I'll show him the power of my Heaven Pisser team," Burning Owl said, nodding as a cold glint flashed in his eyes. Neither Cold Memory nor South Dream offered a response. The Heaven Pisser team Burning Owl controlled was certainly powerful. It might not have a lot of members, less than 50 in total, but every member was an expert among experts in the Azure Chamber of Commerce. Even the weakest member could rival peak experts. If these players split up and targeted a guild, even as a Tier 3 Sword King, Shifeng would find them difficult to deal with. Meanwhile, Shifeng and his 2 companions reached a large forest's edge on their mounts a short distance away from the Fire Dragon Empire. A gigantic magic array enveloped the forest, and a massive spatial tear was faintly visible in the sky. It was as if this entire forest were located within the spatial tear. The only way to enter or leave this forest was through the massive steel checkpoint. This was the Dark Hills, a famous boundary space among the neighboring empires and kingdoms. It was also a well-known trade hub between the nearby countries. Although the Dark Hills was a trade hub, it was not open to individual players or ordinary powers. Only the various major powers from the neighboring kingdoms and empires had access. When they needed to find precious materials, they usually came here. All trades in the Dark Hills were done through a bartering system. There were also large-scale player auctions from time to time, in which incomparably precious items would be sold. Most importantly, the Azure Chamber of Commerce controlled the Dark Hills. Occasionally, Azure would sell items that could only be found on the Western continent, which were very attractive to the various major powers. Azure's presence was the reason that the Dark Hills had become such a famous trade hub. A large number of players stood in line for the checkpoint, with many of them driving carriages filled with non-bag space items. They were all looking to trade their items in the Dark Hills. Due to Azure's forces at the checkpoint, none of these players dared to make a fuss as they waited. The Chamber of Commerce had stationed all sorts of war weapons and magic arrays at the checkpoint as well to secure its rule over the area, and a small army of experts had garrisoned in the Dark Hills. Not even an army of tens of thousands of experts could shake Azure's rule in the Dark Hills, much less a small team. After arriving, Shifeng's group quietly stood in line, waiting to enter the dark hills. It was a dozen minutes or so before they reached the steel gate, reinforced by a magic array. "Second Miss, Guild Leader Black Flame, please wait here for a moment. I'll handle the entry procedures," Cloud Hunter said before approaching the Azure members stationed at the gate. "You and Second Miss can go in," the robust man at the gate said after examining Cloud Hunter's proof of identity. He then pointed to Shifeng and said, "He must wait out here for now." "Why?" "My guild leader is coming with us," Silent Wonder explained. "This is a very important day. To maintain the peace, outsiders aren't allowed on the premises. However, since he is your companion, Second Miss, I'll make this easier, but he'll still have to undergo an inspection before he can enter," the robust man decided, chuckling. "Why aren't your men inspecting them, then?" Silent Wonder demanded as she gestured to a group of players that walked through the gate without an inspection. None of those players were members of the Azure Chamber of Commerce. They are from the Fire Dragon Empire's various superpowers and Azure's esteemed guests. "They are different," the robust man replied. "You better not go overboard, brute. Zero Wings Guild Leader is our Second Miss's esteemed guest," Cloud Hunter coldly informed the robust man, Prideful Brute. Although Prideful Brute was one of Azure's peak experts, he wasn't a member of Silent Wonder's family. Even a fool could tell that he was trying to cause trouble to humiliate Silent Wonder. "Didn't I say that he can go in as long as he allows us to inspect him?" Prideful Brute said, grinning at Cloud Hunter. "What? You want to start a fight here?" With Prideful Brute's question, the 40 heavy crossbows on the wall turned to aim at Cloud Hunter, and two of Prideful Brute's companions stepped forward. Both players were Azure experts as well, and they wore the same battle array set equipment as Prideful Brute. When they activated their battle array, they'd be just as powerful as Cloud Hunter overall. That was the reason that Prideful Brute dared to act so arrogantly before Cloud Hunter. Prideful Brute's attitude even infuriated Silent Wonder. She wanted nothing more than to teach the man a lesson. Shifeng was Zero Wings Guild Leader. If he had to be inspected before he'd be allowed into the Dark Hills, it would be embarrassing for her guild. "Don't do it, Second Miss. If you take action, you'll play right into his hands," Cloud Hunter quickly advised his charge when he sensed Silent Wonder's rage. "He has full control over this area. He has the authorization to suppress you if you attack, even if you are one of the Chamber's vice guild leaders." Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The Dark Hills wasn't an ordinary location. It was an important source of income for the Azure Chamber of Commerce. Hence, the Chamber's security of this area was of the utmost importance. As the checkpoint's manager, Prideful Brute had the authorization to attack anyone who wasn't Azure's guild leader or a Grand Elder if they caused trouble. If Silent Wonder caused a scene and died as a result, her maternal grandfather wouldn't be able to object. "It seems you're not that dumb after all. This is one of Azure's most important territories. Do you really think your family has full say in Azure?" Prideful Brute said, sneering Silent Wonder. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a sword light startled everyone. The attack was so fast that by the time players had reacted, it had already sliced through Prideful Brute's throat. As the sword light faded, Prideful Brute lost all of his HP and collapsed powerlessly to the ground. Everyone that had seen the attack spun toward its origin. The attacker was none other than Silent Wonder's guest Shifeng. Chapter 2359, Unfortunate Death. Prideful Brute died. Chapter 2359, Unfortunate Death. Prideful Brute died. How dare he? Everyone stared at Shifeng in shock. The players from the various superpowers were especially stunned. Azure was a large-scale chamber of commerce with close to 100 years of history in the virtual gaming world. It was no weaker than a super guild. Azure was even capable of operating on both the western and eastern continents in God's domain, which was why the various superpowers sought to become a member. The Dark Hills was one of Azure's important territories, and as such, the chamber had stationed 4,000 experts at the checkpoint. It had also set up 40 heavy crossbows and 6 basic mana pulse cannons on the checkpoint's walls. All sorts of magic arrays protected the checkpoint, as well. Even domain realm experts would have to behave themselves here. After watching Prideful Brute die, Cloud Hunter was utterly stupefied. He simply couldn't understand why Shifeng had been so impulsive. The several cloaked players that Prideful Brute had respectfully welcomed into the Dark Hills earlier jerked to a halt, watching Shifeng curiously. That guy must be crazy, Big Sis Jade. He actually dared to attack someone here. I doubt even the Long family's second miss can save him now, a blue-clad assassin youth said. Although the Long family was one of the Azure Chamber of Commerce's main shareholders, Silent Wonder didn't have a particular position or authority in the chamber. She could only rely on the Long family's old man for help. Prideful Brute, on the other hand, was one of Azure's upper echelons. Silent Wonder was lucky that he had shown her any respect. Now that the situation had devolved, Prideful Brute's faction wouldn't let this matter rest unless the Long family's old man made a personal appearance. Furthermore, magic arrays had been set up all over the Dark Hills checkpoint. Not only was all teleportation prohibited, but if Azure activated a magic barrier, Shifeng wouldn't have any hope of escaping physically. He wouldn't get away with a single death, either. He's courageous, but it's a pity that his actions will only result in his death. He simply doesn't understand how strong superpowers are, the female berserker named Jade Bamboo said, a hint of admiration flashing in her eyes as she gazed at Shifeng. However, she quickly turned away from him to look at the refined middle-aged man above the checkpoint's gate. This middle-aged man was Hermit, one of the Azure Chamber of Commerce's old monsters and the Dark Hills protector. He ranked among the top of the Fire Dragon Empire's players. A domain realm expert wouldn't even have a chance to escape with their life from someone like Hermit, much less defeat the man. She suspected only the two Vice Alliance Masters or the Alliance Master from her Adventure Alliance would have any hope of surviving a fight against Hermit. While Jade Bamboo watched, Hermit jumped down from the wall, landing before Shifeng's group. As he did, he earned horrified looks from the various superpowers experts. They looked as if they had seen a ghost. Even Cloud Hunter watched the older man seriously. Elder Hermit, please don't misunderstand. This isn't what it looks like. Cloud Hunter hurriedly explained. If he had only had to face the checkpoint's war weapons and various experts, he would have been confident of helping Shifeng escape, but now that Hermit was involved, the situation had changed. Hermit wasn't allied with either of the two families, but he was Azure's secret enforcer. He had assassinated countless peak and apex experts that had wished to harm the Azure Chamber of Commerce. In contrast to the visiting players, the several peak experts that guarded the checkpoint couldn't help but grin when Hermit appeared. Those people have crap luck. I hadn't thought that Elder Hermit would get involved. Not even Old Man Long can help that guy now, not to mention Silent Wonder. Elder Hermit is famous for being a stickler for the chamber's rules. Initially, they hadn't been particularly confident of going up against Shifeng. After all, Shifeng had Cloud Hunter with him, who was one of Azure's apex experts and one of the outstanding talents among the organization's younger generation. They could not afford to kill Cloud Hunter without a good enough reason. If Cloud Hunter intended to help Shifeng escape, the swordsman was likely to get away. However, they no longer had to worry about that problem. Hermit was one of the strongest players in the Azure Chamber of Commerce. He'd have no problems killing Cloud Hunter, much less suppress the youth. If Hermit wanted someone dead, very few would survive against him. As Hermit slowly approached Shifeng's group, another group of cloaked players, who watched from afar, began to panic. How? Why is Hermit here? Burning Owl paled when he saw the middle-aged man. Doesn't he normally patrol inside the Dark Hills? Burning Owl had been surprised to see Shifeng abruptly attack and slay Prideful Brute, but he was actually quite pleased to watch the man die. As a result, his opinion of Shifeng significantly improved. As such, he had intended to lend a helping hand, but now that Hermit had arrived, this problem had become far worse. Even Burning Owl was afraid of the older man, and Hermit was one of the guild's grand elders. Hermit wouldn't back down out of respect even if he were one of Azure's vice guild leaders. While Burning Owl considered ignoring the repercussions to save Shifeng, Hermit appeared before the swordsman in question and extended a hand. Greetings, guild leader Black Flame. I am Hermit, the Dark Hills protector, Hermit said, smiling at Shifeng. I've been hearing of you for some time now, but I hadn't expected to meet you here today, Guild Leader Black Flame. Both Azure's members and the various superpowers experts gaped in shock when they heard Hermit's greeting. What's going on? Jade Bamboo stared with wide eyes. Everyone in the Fire Dragon Empire had heard of Hermit, especially the various superpowers experts. They all treated Hermit like the Grim Reaper. The man was known for his indifferent expression, and even when he had stood before her Adventurer Alliance's Alliance Master, he had treated her coldly. Now, however, Hermit welcomed Chiffon with a smile. It was unbelievable. Even Cloud Hunter and Burning Owl, who were both quite familiar with the middle-aged man, were utterly flabbergasted, their eyes nearly falling from their sockets. Was this really the Hermit they knew? Even stranger, Chiffon had just killed Prideful Brute in public. Prideful Brute had picked the fight, but he was still one of Azure's peak experts, and Chiffon had slain him as so many people watched. This would definitely damage Azure's reputation. Normally, Hermit wouldn't tolerate such an insult. Both Cloud Hunter and Burning Owl figured Chiffon would be lucky if Hermit decided to spare him. However, not only wasn't Hermit attacking the swordsman, but he had greeted Chiffon with a smile. You offer too much praise, Elder Hermit. I've heard a lot about you, as well. I am here to accompany Silent Wonder and visit the Azure Chamber of Commerce, Chiffon politely responded. In reality, Hermit's behavior surprised even him. I see. The competition will begin soon. I'll have someone guide you and your group to the venue, Guild Leader Black Flame, Hermit said. He then instructed one of his subordinates to lead Chiffon's group through the gates. After watching the amicable conversation between Hermit and Chiffon, and Hermit's initiative to have someone lead Chiffon into the Dark Hills, everyone was utterly confused. Elder Hermit, that player hasn't been inspected. And he killed Prideful Brute. We cannot just let him get away with this, one of Azure's peak experts whispered to Hermit. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The other Azure experts nodded in agreement. However, they then felt an intense aura wash over them. It was from none other than Hermit himself. Fools. Hermit glared at the peak expert that had spoken. You think you can afford to provoke a Tier 3 player? It seems you lot have been slacking while I wasn't around. From now on, you and that Prideful Brute will spend your days in the combat training rooms. You are only allowed a break once you've passed those trials. After saying so, Hermit ignored the experts and left. Chapter 2360, Dark Hills Shocked. Chapter 2360, Dark Hills Shocked. Watching Hermit leave, the several peak experts from Azure were stunned. Tier 3? How is that possible? Nobody in our chamber is even confident of challenging their Tier 3 promotion quest. How can he have reached Tier 3 already? Tier 3 classes were no longer foreign to the various superpowers in God's domain, who knew very clearly how powerful a Tier 3 class was. It was not something that Tier 2 classes could go up against. Meanwhile, now that level 100 players had already appeared, the various superpowers had started researching the Tier 3 promotion quest. However, their findings indicated that the Tier 3 promotion quest was absurdly difficult. Ordinary experts could not hope to complete the quest as soon as they reached level 100. As for Peak and Apex experts, they faced an even greater challenge. After all, not only had they obtained excellent legacies, but they also had to challenge the highest difficulty promotion quest available in consideration of their future development. If they settled for a mediocre result, they would only be harming themselves in the long run. However, even the ordinary Tier 3 promotion quest already exceeded the expectations of the various superpowers because players had to travel to level 100 neutral maps to conduct their Tier 3 promotion quest. Level 100 neutral maps were not places that just any player could visit. Even a team of level 100, Tier 2 experts would face great danger when exploring a level 100 neutral map. Anyone capable of completing their Tier 3 promotion quest at this stage of the game undoubtedly had extraordinary strength. Needless to say, after completing their Tier 3 promotion quest, they would only have further improved their extraordinary strength. Brute died for nothing this time. That's right. He really dug his grave this time. Let alone Brute, even if Black Flame killed one of the chamber's elders, the chamber would most likely still ignore the matter. If what Hermit said was indeed true, then Prideful Brute's attempt to use Shifeng to make trouble for Silent Wonder was simply suicidal. After all, the Azure Chamber of Commerce didn't have a single Tier 3 player right now. If a Tier 3 player wanted to do something against Azure's members out in the fields, particularly in level 100, Neutral Chamber would be absolutely powerless to do anything about it. To avoid such an outcome, the chamber naturally wouldn't retaliate against Shifeng just because he responded aggressively to Prideful Brute's provocation. As for the spectating crowd, when they saw Hermit berating Azure's peak experts, their jaws dropped even more than before. They simply could not wrap their minds around what had just happened. Who is that Black Flame? Black Flame had killed Azure's Prideful Brute, yet not only did Hermit not react in rage, but he even berated his own people. Jade Bamboo's eyes roiled with confusion as she gazed at Azure's peak experts. Although Hermit had spoken to those peak experts through a team chat, which prevented her from hearing what he said, she could still see his behavior and sense the aura he exuded, particularly his sudden burst of killing intent. That dense killing intent was something that made even an apex expert like herself shudder in fear. Moreover, she could tell that Hermit's killing intent wasn't directed at the departing Shifeng, but at the several peak experts before him. From this, one could tell that the behavior of Prideful Brute and the other experts of Azure had enraged Hermit. At the same time, it was also obvious that Hermit was afraid of Shifeng. Hermit was one of the top 10 experts of the Fire Dragon Empire, yet he actually appeared fearful of another player right now. This was simply unbelievable. It's over, just like that. At this moment, Burning Owl, who stood a short distance away from the checkpoint, could not help his stupefaction when he saw Hermit walking away. He could not understand what had just happened. However, Cold Memory and South Dream, beside him, were not the least bit surprised by Hermit's response to Shifeng's aggression. The fact that Shifeng was now a Tier 3 player was still a secret. After the two of them found out about this, they had immediately reported the matter to their Vice Guild leader. Meanwhile, their Vice Guild leader had promptly issued a gag order on this secret. Although the two of them hadn't told anybody else, with Azure's discerning intelligence department, Hermit must have obtained word of it. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't have let this matter rest so easily. After Shifeng and his companions entered the Dark Hills, they immediately felt a pleasant sensation enveloping their spirits. The Dark Hills was located within a sealed space. Not only was the mana density here considerably higher than that of the outside world, but there were also multiple teleportation gates to the cities of neutral races, which allowed human players to travel freely to those cities. Likewise, neutral players could teleport to the Dark Hills from their respective cities. Hence, the Dark Hills Demonstone Town became an excellent trade hub. The one downside was the ridiculously high cost of the teleportation gates. Each use cost 300 magic crystals, a price utterly beyond ordinary experts. Only major powers could tolerate it. Meanwhile, as Demonstone Town was only so large, in order to avoid overcrowding, Azure, the power that had captured it, had limited entry to members of the various major powers. However, even with this rule in place, Demonstone Town was still extremely crowded. One could see not only the experts of the Fire Dragon Empire's major powers but also many players belonging to various neutral races present. Many of these players were hawking their wares along the streets of the city. Some of the items were enough to tempt even Shifeng. The Demonstone Auction House, which was located at the town center, was the liveliest place in the entire town. It's no wonder so many powers were trying to enter this place back then. Shifeng sighed ruefully as he looked at the crowded auction house. Zero Wing City's auction house might be grand and majestic, but when comparing the quality of items available, Zero Wing City's auction house was leagues behind the Demonstone Auction House. Every item sold in the Demonstone Auction House was precious. One could buy even epic weapons and equipment here. Of course, as the Demonstone Auction House only allowed bartering, it didn't matter even if players brought a ton of coins here. The only options players had were to trade using the requested items or to pay magic crystals. However, magic crystals were a strategic resource to the various major powers. Hence, most of the major powers that came here would only trade using the required items. Those that lacked the required items could only window shop to sate their desires. As for the auction house's second floor, the Azure Chamber of Commerce currently had full control over it. Only the members of invited superpowers were allowed entry there. The members of ordinary powers could only watch Azure's internal competition from the first-floor hall. Under the lead of Hermit's subordinate, Shifeng's group entered the second floor unhindered. At this moment, not only was the second-floor hall seated with Azure's upper echelon, but there were also plenty of players belonging to the upper echelons of various superpowers. Azure's internal competition today would decide whether the Long family or the Duan family would rule over the chamber. Hence, the superpowers placed considerable importance on the competition today. After all, if the family they supported won, they would gain greater benefits from Azure. On the other hand, if the family they supported lost, their benefits would naturally decrease. When Shifeng's group entered the venue, everyone's gaze promptly shifted to it. That person's black flame. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. How desperate is this guy trying to gain the Long family's favor? He actually dared to kill a member of the Duan family. Doesn't he know that the Duan family has much more influence than the Long family in the Fire Dragon Empire? He's used to playing tyrant in a kingdom. He is naturally short-sighted when it comes to the bigger world. I heard that Giant's Heart has plenty of partnerships with the Duan family. This time, the Duan family has even managed to get Vice Guild leader White Autumn to visit. I heard that White Autumn recently gained a god's blessing, and his strength is now off the charts. If the Duan family manages to get White Autumn to secretly take action, Zero Wing will be finished. At this point, the various superpowers members had already heard about what had occurred at the checkpoint. They had never imagined that Shifeng would actually be foolish enough to kill the Duan family's prideful brute. Meanwhile, as these players were discussing quietly, another group of people entered the hall. The moment these people arrived, everyone's attention immediately turned toward them. This was because the newcomers were none other than the Azure Chamber of Commerce's Duan family. Chapter 2361, Gathering of Big Shots. Chapter 2361, Gathering of Big Shots. The Duan family had not sent a lot of people to this competition, only a dozen or so. Their number was far fewer than that of the various superpowers. However, when the attendees present saw the pale white, middle-aged man at the head of the group, they all revealed surprised expressions. The Ice Demon, Duan Han's Han. He actually came too? This is going to be interesting. The Ice Demon's combat standards are not the slightest bit inferior to Hermit's. In fact, he is even stronger than Hermit in a frontal confrontation. Moreover, unlike Hermit, who maintains a neutral stance in Azure, Duan Han's Han is famous for his partisanship. The faces of the various superpowers members shone with anticipation when they saw the man leading the Duan family's group. Duan Han's Han was the strongest person of the Duan family's second generation. His position in Azure rivaled that of the assassin Hermit. He had been fighting in the Western continent all this time, and his fame over there surpassed even Hermit's. Although Duan Han's Han was nicknamed the Ice Demon, his short temper was well known among the various superpowers. Meanwhile, after stepping into the hall, Duan Han's Han did not head toward the VIP seats. Instead, he walked up to Shifeng, the chilling aura he radiated making the various superpowers refinement realm experts shudder involuntarily. "You're that black flame that killed prideful brute at the checkpoint?" Duan Han's Han asked coldly as he glared at Shifeng. Upon hearing Duan Hanshan's question, everyone present revealed looks that suggested they had expected such a situation to arise. Although they were currently inside the auction house and within Azure's territory, Duan Han's Han would not care about etiquette. If Shifeng gave him an unsatisfactory reply, Duan Han's Han would definitely take action. "That's right. Do you have business with me?" Shifeng nodded, not evading Duan Hanshan's question at all. His nonchalant reply also made it seem as if the killing intent Duan Han's Han radiated was non-existent. Upon hearing Shifeng's words, everyone present gasped involuntarily. "Is this guy nuts? He's still trying to act tough at this point." A blue-clad assassin youth, who was also in the second-floor hall, stared at Shifeng in shock. Duan Han's Han was known for being an unstoppable killing machine over in the Western continent. This was why he was nicknamed Ice Demon. Even the guild leaders of the various superpowers had to show respect when meeting him. Shifeng, however, behaved as if he had nothing to do with this matter. He probably doesn't know about the ice demon. After all, Zero Wing is developing in a small kingdom. It shouldn't know much about matters in the Western continent, said Jade Bamboo from beside the assassin youth. She, too, had been surprised at Shifeng's reply. However, now that he has spoken to Ice Demon that way, he's definitely doomed. Hermit maintained a neutral stance in the Azure Chamber of Commerce, so it was only normal for him to ignore the quarrels between the two main families and prioritize the chamber's benefits above all else. However, that was not the case for Duan Hanshan at all. Meanwhile, as soon as Shifeng finished speaking, Duan Hanshan's killing intent skyrocketed in intensity, putting a powerful pressure on the spectating crowd. Good. Young man, you're very brave. It seems that if I don't take some action in the Eastern continent, nobody will place the Azure Chamber of Commerce in their eyes in the future, Duan Hanshan exclaimed wrathfully. Mana started gathering around him, the ambient temperature plummeting. Black Flame is doomed now. At this moment, everyone understood that Duan Hanshan was thoroughly enraged. With this, even Silent Melody and Cloud Hunter would be powerless to save Black Flame. After all, quite a few of those standing behind Duan Hanshan were peak experts. They would have no problem holding Cloud Hunter back for a short period. However, just when everyone thought a battle would break out between Shifeng and Duan Hanshan, a deep and powerful voice echoed throughout the entire hall. Old Ice, are you planning on breaking the chamber's rules? When everyone turned to look at the origin of this voice, what they saw was a man in dark grey armor, who seemed to be in his early 50s. The aura this man radiated was not the slightest bit weaker than that of Duan Hanshan. It daunted the nearby refinement realm experts, deterring them from approaching him. Third uncle, why are you here? Silent Wonder asked in confusion when she saw this middle-aged man. This stalwart, middle-aged man was none other than Long Xianglong, one of the Long family's second-generation leaders. He was also one of Azure's Grand Elders and was Silent Wonder's third uncle. As Long Xianglong was addicted to improving his combat standards, he had not bothered himself with the chamber's matters in a very long time. Your father has some other matters to take care of and cannot attend this competition, so he asked me to come in his place, Long Xianglong said, a rare smile appearing on his face when he looked at Silent Wonder. He then turned to look at Duan Hanshan. Old Ice, Azure is holding an important competition here today. Are you still planning on taking action here? Or are you telling me that you've already forgotten about the chamber's rules? At Long Xianglong's words, Duan Hanshan's complexion darkened. Lunatic Long, I'll step back out of respect for you this time. However, if there is a next time, your people won't be as lucky, Duan Hanshan said. After glaring at Shifeng, he promptly turned around and left. Upon seeing this, Cloud Hunter breathed a deep sigh of relief. At the same time, he was also speechless at Shifeng's bravery. It was fortunate that Long Xianglong appeared. While attacking an invited guest within Azure's territory was indeed against Azure's rules, if Duan Hanshan was intent on taking action, even Cloud Hunter was not confident of stopping the ice demon. However, Long Xianglong was Duan Hanshan's equal in strength. Moreover, the rules were on Long Xianglong's side. If Duan Hanshan took action, he would definitely end up getting himself punished. After seeing Duan Hanshan leave, Long Xianglong turned his gaze away from the ice demon and walked up to Shifeng. Young man, you shouldn't act so impulsively next time. That old ice demon usually does whatever he wants, Long Xianglong admonished Shifeng slightly. Very quickly, however, he shifted his attention to Silent Wonder and said, Wonder, your grandfather has constantly been thinking about you. If not for the competition this time, he would have most likely called you back already. Once this competition is over, return with me. From the previous scene, Long Xianglong understood that Shifeng was a very impulsive person. If he allowed his niece to remain in Zero Wing, it would only be a matter of time before disaster befell her. Return? No. I wish to stay in Zero Wing and continue my development there. In any case, Owl and Big Sis Silk are more than enough to handle the chamber's affairs. It doesn't matter whether I return or not, Silent Wonder said, shaking her head. Moreover, I'm developing very well. Nonsense. Your talents are second only to Silk Moon's. It might be fine if it were before, but after this competition, the struggle between the two main families will come to an end. Regardless of today's outcome, you will receive the chamber's full support. At that time, your improvement speed will definitely exceed your current rate, Long Xianglong said as he glared in exasperation at Silent Wonder. The Azure Chamber of Commerce's resources far surpassed that of ordinary superpowers. The future Silent Wonder could have in Azure would be many times better than if she remained in Zero Wing. In fact, remaining in Zero Wing would be a complete and utter waste of her talents. Moreover, the Long family's third generation still needed some strong pillars to support it. Simply relying on Burning Owl and Silk Moon wouldn't be enough. Third uncle, I've already decided. Moreover, I feel that Zero Wing is quite good. Stop trying to persuade me, Silent Wonder said, shaking her head. She was determined to stick to her decision. Just as Long Xianglong was about to launch another round of persuasion, a fresh group of players arrived, inducing gasps throughout the hall. This was because these players were members of Giant's Heart, a superpower that had thoroughly shaken the foundations of the Fire Dragon Empire and was capable of contending against the Super Guild Pride Empire. In fact, when comparing them purely in terms of naval prowess, Giant's Heart was superior to Pride Empire. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Nowadays, the various superpowers were placing extreme emphasis on their naval development. Since Giant's Heart possessed exceedingly great naval prowess, it had naturally become the target of partnership for many other superpowers. Meanwhile, the person leading Giant's Heart's group this time was none other than White Autumn, one of Giant's Heart's vice guild leaders, who was currently a megastar in the Fire Dragon Empire. At the same time, he was an existence that the various superpowers feared greatly because he had gained the sea god's blessing and possessed near unrivaled strength out at sea. During these past few days, White Autumn's existence alone had inflicted a lot of major losses on Pride Empire. When White Autumn entered the hall, the upper echelons of the various attending superpowers promptly surged forward to greet him. Azure's Duan Hanshan and Long Xianglong even took the initiative to greet White Autumn in an attempt to bridge the distance between Giant's Heart and the Azure Chamber of Commerce. However, after making small talk with the other attendees for a short time, White Autumn suddenly walked up to Shifeng. Greetings, Guild Leader Black Flame. I am White Autumn, one of Giant's Heart's vice guild leaders. I have heard a lot about you. I feel joyful that I finally get to meet you today. White Autumn greeted Shifeng in a very friendly manner. Chapter 2362, She's an Advanced Master Alchemist too? Chapter 2362, She's an Advanced Master Alchemist too? Silence. Shock. For a time, everyone in the hall was stunned. White Autumn was one of Giant's Heart's vice guild leaders as well as one of the strongest individuals in the Fire Dragon Empire. After he obtained the sea god's blessing, his strength had further skyrocketed. Nowadays, he was an existence that even the guild leaders of the various superpowers wished to befriend. Now, however, White Autumn had actually taken the initiative to greet Shifeng. Let alone the various superpowers' upper echelons, even Long Xianglong and Duan Hanshan could not help looking confused at this scene. In their opinion, Shifeng was merely the guild leader of a pseudo-superpower. Even if Zero Wing had a lot of potential, it would still take a long time to become a superpower. Moreover, even if it eventually became a superpower, it still wouldn't warrant the attention of someone like White Autumn. Could that kid have some kind of relationship with Giant's Heart? Duan Hanshan guessed as he took in Shifeng's calm expression. White Autumn was an existence that even the Duan family fervently wished to befriend. After all, Giant's Heart possessed extraordinary strength out at sea. In the future, when the various powers of the two main continents interacted more frequently, maritime trade would be unavoidable. So, he still has such a backer. It's no wonder he paid no heed to Old Ice's questioning. Long Xianglong also started observing Shifeng. He had never thought that Shifeng would have such a connection. If Shifeng had Giant's Heart supporting him, with the Azure Chamber of Commerce's current attitude toward Giant's Heart, Duan Hanshan definitely wouldn't dare to casually take action against Shifeng. Although the Ice Demon was short-tempered, he was no fool. He knew when he should take action and when he should restrain himself. A short distance away, Jade Bamboo and the blue-clad assassin beside her were dazed for quite some time after seeing White Autumn greeting Shifeng. When they snapped out of their daze, however, realization immediately dawned upon them. Previously, they had been curious as to why Hermit had spared Shifeng so easily. Looking at it now, Hermit must have known about the relationship between Shifeng and Giant's Heart. Meanwhile, in response to White Autumn's greeting, Shifeng simply nodded and said, "Vice Guild Leader White, you're too courteous." In reality, Shifeng was also somewhat surprised that White Autumn had taken the initiative to greet him. After all, his current identity was Black Flame, not Yifeng. Moreover, he had only helped White Autumn complete a quest and receive the Sea God's blessing. This amount of help should not warrant White Autumn's enthusiastic welcome. "Guild Leader Black Flame, I am not being courteous at all," White Autumn said, shaking his head. In a serious tone, he continued, "Currently, Giant's Heart has captured a relatively excellent town over at Dark Moon Lake, outside the Fire Dragon Empire. We wish to form a partnership with Zero Wing for this town. May I know if Guild Leader Black Flame is interested?" As soon as White Autumn finished speaking, gasps filled the hall once more. As for Long Xianglong and Duan Hanshan, they both gaped in shock at this scene, their minds blank with disbelief. The area around Dark Moon Lake was a fat piece of meat that many powers were eyeing. Not only was it a neutral map, but it was even connected to the sea, a location without many developmental restrictions. Dark Moon Town had the potential to become a large-scale port city. At that time, the income generated from the city would be several times higher than that from NPC port cities. Hence, many of the Fire Dragon Empire's superpowers had tried to capture Dark Moon Town. In the end, however, it was White Autumn who succeeded. Moreover, he had even served Pride Empire a huge loss while doing so. Now, however, White Autumn wanted to form a partnership with Shifeng. Dark Moon Town? Zero Wing is naturally very interested in this partnership, Shifeng said, although he, too, was very surprised by White Autumn's suggestion. Shifeng was relatively familiar with Dark Moon Town, or more precisely, with Dark Moon City. In his previous life, Dark Moon City had been the largest player-operated port city in the vicinity of the Fire Dragon Empire. It had practically been the lifeline linking the Fire Dragon Empire with the sea. The prices of the shops and lands inside Dark Moon City had rivaled even those of imperial capitals. Back then, Giant's Heart ruled over Dark Moon City as well, and countless powers wished to form a partnership with the guild. Unfortunately for them, very few powers actually succeeded. During the time Shifeng and White Autumn were hashing out the details of their partnership, everyone present was thoroughly stupefied, especially Duan Hanshan and Long Xianglong. Shock and confusion filled their hearts. They even wondered if they were dreaming. Who is he? The Fire Dragon Empire's various superpowers were desperately seeking to cooperate with Giant's Heart on Dark Moon Town. Now, however, White Autumn was proposing a partnership with Shifeng. This was simply absurd. Aside from Duan Hanshan and Long Xianglong, Burning Owl and Cold Memories Group were also astonished by this scene. "Big Sis, what kind of relationship does your guild have with Giant's Heart?" Burning Owl asked Silent Wonder. Even though Burning Owl had just arrived in the Eastern Continent, he knew about Dark Moon Town and its importance because one of his tasks in coming to the Eastern Continent this time was to negotiate a partnership with Giant's Heart regarding Dark Moon Town. However, there were simply too many superpowers eyeing Dark Moon Town, so even with the Azure Chamber of Commerce's backing, he was not particularly confident in his chances. Now, however, Cold Memory and South Dream were also eager to hear the answer to Burning Owl's question. They knew for a fact that Shifeng was a Tier 3 player. However, they never considered that Zero Wing might still possess a foundation so powerful that it would warrant Giant's Heart's active solicitation. This was something even Dark Pursuit was incapable of accomplishing. I don't know, either. Silent Wonder was also confused by this situation. Meanwhile, White Autumn himself paid no heed whatsoever to the shock everyone felt at his actions. He had personally witnessed Zero Wing's strength before, particularly its Crimson Dragon flying ship. The flying ship's performance exceeded his expectations entirely. Meanwhile, after seeing Shifeng now, he was even more certain that his decision to partner with Zero Wing was a wise one. Due to the sea god's blessing, White Autumn's perception toward life aura and danger had improved significantly. When looking at Shifeng, he actually felt a deadly threat. Moreover, he could also tell that Shifeng's life aura was stronger than his own. The only explanation he could think of for this situation was that Shifeng was a Tier 3 player. In a period where none of the various superpowers possessed even one Tier 3 player, Zero Wing actually had two. He simply did not know what to say about this situation. Elder Hans Han, this is going to be troublesome. Silent Wonder is a member of Zero Wing. Now that Zero Wing is proven to have a close relationship with Giant's Heart, the Long family will have an easier time partnering with Giant's Heart, a youth standing behind Duan Hanshan said worriedly. What's there to worry about? So what if the Long family gets to partner with Giant's Heart? The most important point is who will get to rule Azure. Even if Zero Wing has a good relationship with Giant's Heart, that won't help the Long family or Silent Wonder win the upcoming competition, Duan Hanshan retorted. Although the Long family's Silk Moon had also joined the famous Dark Pursuit as a lifestyle player, the time she joined Dark Pursuit was much shorter compared to Yang Xiaoqian's. Moreover, Yang Xiaoqian was almost as talented as Silk Moon. In such a situation, it would be impossible for Silk Moon to beat Yang Xiaoqian. While Duan Hanshan was saying so, another group of players arrived in the second-floor hall. Similar to the arrival of Giant's Heart's group, the arrival of this group of players caused quite a commotion because it consisted of Dark Pursuit's members. Not only was the lowest-leveled player among them level 100, but the equipment they possessed was also something that could make even the upper echelons of the various superpowers envious. Of the dozen or so Dark Pursuit members that entered the hall, even the worst equipped among them had 3 pieces of epic equipment paired up with a 6-piece, level 95 Dark Gold set equipment. The most eye-catching among these players were undoubtedly the 2 heroic women walking in the lead. One of these women was Silk Moon, a cursemancer that possessed a mature and seductive charm. Silk Moon's appearance and figure were not the slightest bit inferior to Silent Wonder's. The other tall and graceful woman was Yang Xiaoqian. However, unlike Silk Moon's mature appearance, Yang Xiaoqian looked to be only 18 years old. Both women were actually geared in the Elven Light set, an 8-piece set of level 95 Dark Gold equipment, currently the best set equipment available for magical classes. The other pieces of equipment they wore were all epic rank. Amazing. Truly amazing. So, this is Dark Pursuit's foundations? The Elven Light set. Dark Pursuit is really going all out for the competition this time. It seems the winner of this competition is going to be one of these two. I know, right? I heard that Dark Pursuit invested all its available resources into nurturing the two of them. Although the Long family's and Duan family's other heirs are excellent, these two are on a completely different level. The various superpowers upper echelons were green with envy as they looked at Silk Moon and Yang Xiaoqian. The Elven Light set was currently the strongest Dark Gold set equipment available for magical class players. None of the various superpowers present had managed to complete even a single set yet. However, Dark Pursuit actually had 2. This was simply unbelievable. With the arrival of Dark Pursuit's group, all 6 representatives of the Long family and Duan family were finally present. A short moment later, an elegant, middle-aged man walked to the center of the hall. This man was none other than Hermit, the manager of the Dark Hills. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for attending the Azure Chamber of Commerce's alchemy competition today, Hermit said. I believe everyone present has been waiting for quite some time now, so I'll dispense with the pleasantries. The competition this time will be very simple. Participants will have to produce as many meditation souls and intermediate master potion as possible within the given time frame. However, there is a precondition for those seeking to participate in the competition. They must be an intermediate master alchemist at the very minimum. Those who do not meet this requirement may not participate in the competition, so all participants, please show your alchemist insignias. Upon hearing the rules, the various spectators gasped involuntarily. Setting aside the meditation soul's production difficulty, just the condition of intermediate mastery would already leave countless alchemist players in despair. The requirements of this competition are really high. I bet that more than half of the participants will be disqualified because of this condition. Cold Memory was astonished when she heard Hermit's words. Nurturing an intermediate master alchemist was easier said than done. This was a task that even Dark Pursuit found difficult. Despite being very talented herself, Cold Memory was still a long way from the intermediate master rank. Needless to say, others would have an even more difficult time attaining it. In the next moment, just like Cold Memory anticipated, the Long family's first representative revealed that he was only a basic master alchemist. As for the Duan family's heirs, Duan Ying and Duan Qingfeng, they, too, were only basic master alchemists. Although they would be extremely talented geniuses in the eyes of the various superpowers, they failed to meet the minimum requirement for participation in this competition. When it was Yang Xiaoqian's turn, she proudly took out an insignia with 3 silver moons. Upon seeing this insignia, the spectating crowd gasped in shock. Advanced Master rank. She's actually an advanced Master alchemist. How is this possible? Our guild doesn't even have an intermediate master, yet she's actually an advanced master already? The various superpowers were filled with an indescribable sense of shock and envy at this scene. After all, the abilities an advanced master could exhibit were far greater than those of an intermediate master. Furthermore, an advanced master could produce advanced master potions, which would be extremely useful when exploring new maps in the future. However, shortly after Yang Xiaoqian flaunted her insignia, the Long family's Silk Moon also took out an insignia with 3 silver moons on it, shocking the spectating crowd once more. 2 advanced master alchemist. How powerful is Dark Pursuit? Advanced master alchemist. Sure enough, everyone else is no match for these 2 women. The various superpowers were left breathless by this revelation. At the same time, they also started growing fearful of Dark Pursuit's foundations. Big Sis Silk really is amazing. With this, we at least have a 50% chance of winning. Burning Owl sighed in relief when he saw Silk Moon's alchemist insignia. The latest information he had received said that Yang Xiaoqian had been promoted into an advanced master alchemist already while Silk Moon was still trying. Hence, he had been considerably worried until this point. Now that Silk Moon had become an advanced master alchemist as well, both the Long family and Duan family could be said to be on the same starting line. It's a pity that Wonder did not join Dark Pursuit. Otherwise, she would also have had a chance at becoming an advanced master alchemist before this competition, and our chances of winning will be much greater. Cold Memory was relatively confident in her own guild's strength. However, as Silent Wonder was determined to stay in Zero Wing, Cold Memory couldn't do anything about it. This is already good enough. At least, it is much better than our initial expectations, South Dream said, chuckling. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. She caught up. Yang Xiaoqian reflexively took an extra glance at Silk Moon. She had never thought that Silk Moon would actually succeed in catching up with her. While everyone was wondering who between Yang Xiaoqian or Silk Moon would win this competition, Silent Wonder also took out an alchemist insignia with 3 silver moons on it from her bag. Impossible. She's an advanced master alchemist too? Chapter 2363, Shocking the Venue. Chapter 2363, Shocking the Venue. Silence filled the competition venue as everyone stared at Silent Wonder's Triple Moon alchemist insignia. They could all understand Silk Moon and Yang Xiaoqian becoming advanced master alchemists, but none of them could fathom out Silent Wonder had become one as well. It wasn't easy to reach advanced master rank. Even now, very few of God's domain superpowers had successfully nurtured an advanced master alchemist, yet Zero Wing had. It was utterly unbelievable. How is this possible? Cold Memory was shocked to see Silent Wonder's advanced master alchemist insignia. How has she been promoted so quickly? Completing the requirements to become an advanced master alchemist was easier said than done. Aside from talent, the rare resources required for research and experimentation were more than enough to give any superpower a huge headache. Dark Pursuit had only been able to supply these resources due to its control in the Moon God's world and access to precious alchemical resources. This was why Cold Memory was so confident in Dark Pursuit's ability to nurture advanced master alchemists. Any other superpower would likely run out of materials before one of its alchemists could reach advanced master rank. Zero Wing had the research workshop, but that only provided guidelines to assist the guild's lifestyle players. In doing so, it would only slightly reduce the amount of materials one would need for their experiments. Moreover, Silent Wonder had been some time away from reaching advanced master rank during their last meeting. She hadn't progressed as far as Silk Moon and Yang Xiaoqian, who had stood before the threshold to advanced master rank. Even as talented as Silent Wonder was, she should have needed another fortnight to complete her promotion, yet she had caught up with Silk Moon and Yang Xiaoqian in less than a week. Cold memory couldn't imagine how Zero Wing had helped her accomplish the feat. Even Silk Moon and Yang Xiaoqian, who stood beside Silent Wonder, were astonished. Little sis actually succeeded. Silk Moon could not help but glance at Shifeng, who watched from the spectator stands, with a soft smile. It seems Zero Wing is quite capable, after all. Silk Moon knew better than anyone here how difficult it was to reach advanced master rank. One needed talent and resources. Anyone who said otherwise was either lying or a fool. An advanced master alchemist. Ha ha ha. This girl is quite impressive. Long Xianglong laughed when he saw the alchemist insignia in Silent Wonder's hand. Now, he was even more determined to take the girl with him to the Western continent. Even without a superpower's support, Silent Wonder had become an advanced master alchemist. She proved to be frighteningly talented. Long Xianglong acknowledged that Zero Wing had played a massive role in his niece's success, but how could such a small guild compete with the Azure Chamber of Commerce's resources? When the Duan family's members saw that Silent Wonder was also an advanced master alchemist, they watched on with grim expressions. Although the final victor would decide the competition's outcome, the fact that the Long family had one more advanced master alchemist than they did gave their competitor an edge. Why are you so worried? She's merely an advanced master alchemist, Duan Hansan said as he eyed the people around him. So what if she's a talented alchemist? This competition won't be won on alchemy standards alone. The competition would determine which of the two families had a stronger heir. Even though this was an alchemy competition, it wasn't any ordinary battle between alchemists. High alchemy standards would provide an advantage, but combat power would also play a significant role. The participants would have to fight for the materials they needed. If they weren't strong enough in combat, they wouldn't secure enough materials, and without materials, how were they supposed to brew the required potion? With Duan Hanshan's comment, realization dawned on the other Duan family members. After all was said and done, this competition would rely on the strength of the competitors' backers. In this regard, Zero Wing was no match for Dark Pursuit. While everyone chatted amongst themselves, Hermit, who had inspected all 6 participants' insignias, spoke again. Since the remaining participants have met the minimum requirements, let's officially begin this competition. As you all know, the participants are required to produce meditation soul potions, an intermediate master potion. However, participants must earn their required materials, Hermit explained as he gestured to an approaching group of players. These players carried gigantic cages into the venue, all containing incredibly powerful beasts. He then turned to Silk Moon, Yang Xiaoqian, and Silent Wonder. You will face these level 100 wild beasts. You will earn more materials by defeating stronger monsters. Of the monsters we've prepared, the weakest is a lord. For defeating this monster, you'll acquire 3 sets of materials. The next monster is a high lord, and you'll earn 6 sets for defeating it. You will not be required to defeat the level 100 Great Lord, but if you survive against it for 10 minutes, you'll receive 10 sets of materials. If you survive for 10 minutes against the level 100 Grand Lord, you'll receive 20 sets of materials. However, you will only have one chance to challenge a monster, so choose wisely. As Hermit finished his explanation, a commotion erupted in the venue. The Azure Chamber of Commerce is so generous. It's captured so many level 100 wild beast. Crap. Isn't this challenge a little too difficult? Not even level 100 Refinement Realm experts can defeat a level 100 Lord one-on-one, yet it's the weakest monster here. Do the participants even stand a chance? The various superpowers felt a cold chill when they saw Azure's level 100 wild beasts. Capturing wild beasts to tame as mounts was extremely difficult, especially at such a high level. Ordinary powers couldn't afford to spare the amount of manpower the task would require, yet Azure used these precious level 100 wild beasts to test its heir's strength. Even the various superpowers upper echelons thought this competition was absurdly difficult. At this stage of the game, level 100 peak experts would, at most, be strong enough to challenge a level 100 High Lord. If they encountered a level 100 Great Lord alone, they'd have no choice but to flee. Even worse, lifestyle players had far less combat power than actual combat players. Whether or not Silk Moon and the others could fight a level 100 Lord was already questionable, not to mention a High Lord. The various Superpowers members couldn't help but glance at Silent Wonder in pity. Of the 3 remaining participants, only Silent Wonder was under level 100. Other experts might be impressed that she had reached level 99, but it put her at an overwhelming disadvantage in this competition. Although there was only one level between level 99 and 100, the difference between the strength one could command at those levels was tremendous. A level 100 player would have far more control and flexibility than a level 99 player, and the difference between the basic attributes provided by equipment was just as drastic. I had never thought you'd become an advanced master alchemist before the competition as well. Had you joined Dark Pursuit, we might have been rivals in this competition. However, it seems you'll just be watching from the sidelines, Yang Xiaoqian said, chuckling. If you have to assign blame, blame yourself for being so stubborn. Rather than accept Dark Pursuit's invitation, you chose to remain with a non-superpower like Zero Wing. Everyone has constantly compared Silent Wonder and Yang Xiaoqian, assuming one of them would win this competition. However, their guilds were simply on different levels. Now, only Silk Moon had a chance of giving Yang Xiaoqian a run for her money. Silk Moon was powerful in every aspect and had been known as an unrivaled genius. Unfortunately, she had become quite strange after surviving an illness a few years ago. Now, Yang Xiaoqian didn't even think of Silk Moon as a competitor. Cold Memory and South Dream watched the 3 participants, frustrated. They had thought Silent Wonder had a significantly higher chance of winning now that she had become an advanced master alchemist, but even they would struggle in this competition, not to mention Silent Wonder. Pick a difficulty. Remember, you only have one opportunity. You won't get a second chance, Hermit told the 3 young women before him. This trial wasn't a simple test of strength, it would also test the participants' understanding of their strength. I choose the High Lord, Silk Moon said after giving the matter some thought. I choose the High Lord, as well, Yang Xiaoqian said without hesitation. Hearing Silk Moon and Yang Xiaoqian's decision, Hermit nodded, satisfied. He then turned to Silent Wonder, curious about which beast the girl would choose. Although Silent Wonder hadn't yet reached level 100, she should have a chance against a level 100 Lord. If she could defeat it, she'd still have a chance at victory. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. I wonder which difficulty Silent Wonder will choose. Is that necessary? She'll definitely challenge the Lord. That's her only hope. If she tries to face the High Lord, she'll likely die after a single hit. I guess you're right. She's talented, but it's a pity she only has Zero Wing's support. If she were backed by a superpower, even an ordinary one, she might have had a chance against Silk Moon and Yang Xiaoqian. Quietly, the audience discussed Silent Wonder's situation, glancing at Shifeng with mocking sneers. So what if Zero Wing were supported by Giant's Heart? In the end, Zero Wing's weakness would be exposed before them all. While everyone softly talked among themselves, Silent Wonder had made her decision and looked at Hermit, announcing, I choose the Grand Lord. Chapter 2364, Overwhelming Strength the Grand Lord? Chapter 2364, Overwhelming Strength the Grand Lord? She's lost her mind. That's a level 100 Grand Lord we're talking about. What arrogance. Has she never witnessed a level 100 Grand Lord's strength before? Even Domain Realm experts would have to flee from such a monster. When they heard Silent Wonder's decision, everyone felt that she had gone mad and was hopelessly optimistic. Why else would she make such a foolish, insane choice? Even the various superpowers expert teams had trouble with level 100 monsters at this stage of the game. No player could solo a level 100 Great Lord, much less a Grand Lord. Wonder is being too impulsive. Long Xianglong could only shake his head and sigh at his niece's decision. Although Hermit had presented 4 choices for the competition, as someone who had fought in level 100 neutral maps, he knew that there were really only 2 viable difficulties. The bit about surviving for 10 minutes was a joke. Level 100 peak experts wouldn't even survive more than 3 minutes against a level 100 Great Lord, much less against a Grand Lord. Moreover, Silent Wonder and the others were lifestyle players, who rarely engaged in combat. What is Wonder thinking? Even if she's trying to improve Zero Wing's prestige, does she really need to choose a Grand Lord to do it? Cold Memory muttered, baffled. Cold Memory understood the reason behind Silent Wonder's decision. Many of the spectators here lamented over the fact that Zero Wing, not a superpower, backed her. She must have found these opinions offensive and chose to challenge a Grand Lord to prove Zero Wing's strength. However, Cold Memory was confused that Silent Wonder had chosen the Grand Lord instead of the Great Lord. She had better chances against the Great Lord, even if they were still quite slim, than she had against a Grand Lord. Now, she was simply making a fool of herself. Are you certain that you wish to challenge the Grand Lord, Wonder? Hermit, who was just as surprised by the girl's decision, asked for confirmation. Before the trial, Azure's Grand Elders had tested the challenge's viability. They had come to the conclusion that the highest difficulty challenge would be utterly impossible for current players. That's right. I choose to challenge a Grand Lord, Silent Wonder declared. Both Silk Moon and Yang Xiaoqian gave Silent Wonder strange looks. They had never thought that her choice was a serious one. It seems you'll never change, Wonder. It's a pity that you'll only find yourself in a dead end, Yang Xiaoqian said. She understood that Silent Wonder was attempting to save herself from a hopeless situation, but her opponent wasn't aware of how terrifying a level 100 Grand Lord really was. She, on the other hand, had encountered such a monster personally when she had accompanied her guild's main force on an expedition. All right. Since you 3 have chosen, we'll begin the competition according to the original order, Hermit said. He could see Silent Wonder's determination, so he didn't try to dissuade her. A group of players then brought a 4-meter-tall cage into the venue. As the cage opened, a 3-tailed flaming tiger burst forth. As it did, Azure's members activated the magic array they had set up earlier, trapping the flaming tiger within. Not only did this magic barrier prevent the flaming tiger from escaping, but it also suppressed the flaming tiger's recovery speed. It was considered a bonus to the challengers. 3-tailed flaming tiger, wild beast, high lord, level 100 HP 42 000 000 42 000 000. The moment the flaming tiger emerged from its cage, every player in the venue felt an intense pressure bear down on them. Moreover, the temperature within the magic barrier rose due to the flaming tiger's body. It caused steam to rise, obscuring the space inside the barrier. However, Yang Xiaoqian, the competition's first challenger, was unfazed by the monster, and she slowly and steadily walked toward it. Roar! The instant Yang Xiaoqian entered the barrier, the flaming tiger roared and pounced, displaying such incredible speed that it made many of the Tier 2 experts in the venue nervous. The flaming tiger's movement speed was easily higher than that of a Tier 2 assassin. The flaming tiger swiped a paw at Yang Xiaoqian, and in response, she lifted her staff, summoning a thick ice wall between her and the High Lord. Even when the flaming tiger struck the ice wall, it suffered hardly any damage. What powerful attributes! Is this the might of the Elven Light set? Everyone watched in astonishment as Yang Xiaoqian effortlessly blocked the flaming tiger's attack. They were all aware of how powerful a level 100 High Lord was. Even a level 100, Tier 2 metric tons would struggle to tank one. The task would usually require 2 MTS. Yang Xiaoqian, however, had stopped the flaming tiger's assault with a simple spell. What amazing Tier 2 silent casting! Yang Xiaoqian's ice wall even surprised Cold Memory. The young woman hadn't cast the ordinary Tier 1 ice wall. Rather, Yang Xiaoqian had cast the Tier 2 spell Enchanted Ice Wall, a magically enhanced version of the Tier 1 ice wall. Of course, Due to how complex Tier 2 spells were, they were difficult to cast without a chant. Even if an elementalist succeeded to do so without a chant, their completion rate would suffer, reducing the spell's power in turn. And yet, despite casting the spell without a chant, Yang Xiaoqian's ice wall was strong enough to stop the flaming tiger. Her success was a testament to her high spell completion rate. Seeing this, Cold Memory couldn't help but feel inferior when it came to mental fortitude and control over mana. Seeing that its attack had failed, the flaming tiger circled the ice wall, but Yang Xiaoqian didn't give it the opportunity. She immediately summoned several more ice walls, surrounding the flame tiger. She then double speedcast her Tier 2 spells, Earthen Spike and Frostwheel arrows. With nowhere to run, both attacks slammed into the flaming tiger, and damages of over -100,000 appeared above the High Lord's head, one after another. The flaming tiger tried to break through the ice walls, but Yang Xiaoqian replaced the destroyed ice walls almost instantly. When the flaming tiger did manage to break free and attack Yang Xiaoqian, she activated Blink and teleported to a safe distance. She would then create another line of ice walls, steadily draining the High Lord's HP. The young elementalist's performance stunned the various superpowers experts. They had never dreamed that a player could toy with a level 100 High Lord like this. The way she smoothly transitioned from spell to spell was particularly impressive. It almost looked like she gracefully danced across the battlefield as she attacked and evaded. Many of the peak experts felt their scalps tingle as they watched. In the end, Yang Xiaoqian killed the three-tailed flaming tiger in less than 15 minutes. After Yang Xiaoqian emerged from the barrier, it was Silk Moon's turn. She also had to face a three-tailed flaming tiger, but since she was a Cursemancer, her attack power wasn't as high as Yang Xiaoqian's, an elementalist. Even so, Silk Moon's performance stunned the crowd as well. During her battle with the flaming tiger, she cast a variety of spells to reduce the High Lord's mobility, reaction speed, strength, and agility. To everyone's surprise, Silk Moon was also a domain realm expert. Once she had weakened the flaming tiger, the Cursemancer toyed with it as if she were playing with a kitten. Although Silk Moon's fight had lasted 5 minutes longer than Yang Xiaoqian's, she had seemed far more relaxed than her opponent. After the battle, the spectators burst into a heated discussion. Shortly after Silk Moon's fight, Azure's members brought in a 10-meter-tall cage, which attracted everyone's attention immediately. Before they opened the cage, Azure's members strengthened the magic array, which became so powerful that the mana density around it increased slightly. As the cage opened, a 9-meter-tall bear walked onto the battlefield. It was covered in pitch-black fur, and runes hovered around its body. When the crowd felt the bear's frightening aura, they felt chills crawl down their spines. Dark Moon Bear, Wild Beast, Grand Lord, Level 100 HP 210 210 It's so strong. So, this is a level 100 Grand Lord. How is this supposed to be a fair fight? That thing can likely kill peak MTS with a single slap. Few of these experts had ever seen a level 100 Grand Lord, and they couldn't help but gasp when they saw the Dark Moon Bear. If not for the magic array that trapped the wild beast, they might have fled from the venue. Wonder, it's your turn now, but it's not too late to give up, Hermit gently told Silent Wonder. No individual player could deal with a creature as strong as the Dark Moon Bear. Not only would players have to fight as a team to defeat this monstrosity, but they'd also have to rely on a magic array to suppress it. Trying to survive against the unsuppressed Dark Moon Bear for 10 minutes was utterly impossible for a level 99, Tier 2 player. However, Silent Wonder ignored Hermit's advice as she approached the magic barrier. She's insane. I wonder how many hits she'll last. Hits? You think she can last more than one? That's a level 100 Grand Lord we're talking about. My guild's chief MT underestimated a level 100 Grand Lord once, and he died after 2 hits. The team's healers didn't even have a chance to heal him. What can an elementalist like her possibly do? As everyone watched Silent Wonder walk toward the barrier, they were certain that she had some mental issues. As far as they were concerned, trying to fight such a powerful beast was suicidal. Guild leader Black Flame, will Miss Wonder really be alright against the Dark Moon Bear? White Autumn asked as he watched. He knew that Shifeng was a Tier 3 player, but Silent Wonder wasn't. White Autumn wouldn't even be confident of lasting more than 10 minutes against the Grand Lord if he hadn't obtained the Sea God's blessing. Meanwhile, Silent Wonder's life aura wasn't particularly powerful, which proved that she only had an ordinary legacy. White Autumn doubted she'd even last 1 minute, much less 10. Relax. She knows what she's doing, Shifeng said, chuckling. As soon as Shifeng said that, Silent Wonder crossed the magic barrier. Almost simultaneously, the Dark Moon Bear charged at her, its frightening aura startling some of the Apex experts watching the fight. However, Silent Wonder held her composure. She simply removed her black cloak, revealing her crimson robes, and retrieved a resplendent staff from her bag, equipping it. As soon as she did, all of the mana within the barrier swarmed toward her as if she were this space's true queen. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Before the Dark Moon Bear could reach Silent Wonder, she lightly swung her staff. Answering her call, mana surged toward the tip of her staff, transforming into a flaming spear that shot toward the Grand Lord. The fire spear was so fast that not even the Dark Moon Bear had time to react. Boom! As the fiery weapon and the pitch-black bear collided, a flaming pillar enveloped the Dark Moon Bear, its flames so powerful that it shook the magic barrier. When the flames subsided, the Dark Moon Bear slid to an abrupt halt. Chapter 2365, Humanoid Monster. Chapter 2365, Humanoid Monster. Although the Dark Moon Bear had simply halted its charge as a result of Silent Wonder's attack, the spectating crowd gaped in shock. As if time had stopped, silence fell over the competition venue. How is that possible? What did she do? Even Du and Hanshan, Long Xianglong, and White Autumn were shocked, not to mention the various superpowers experts. Even a 100-man team of level 100, Tier 2 experts would be annihilated if they tried to challenge a level 100 Grand Lord without a magic array, yet Silent Wonder stood against such a beast alone. Despite being only level 99, Silent Wonder had stopped the Dark Moon Beat's charge with a single spell. It was unbelievable. Since when has Wonder been able to silent cast Tier 2 spells so proficiently? Cold Memory stared at the smoking Dark Moon Bear, confused. Although the power of Silent Wonder's spell had surprised Cold Memory, she was more surprised by the young elementalist's silent casting. When one cast a spell without chanting, they sacrificed a significant percentage of their spell completion rate. Achieving an 80% completion rate as Yang Xiaoqian had was already impressive, yet Silent Wonder had gone a step further and cast her spell with more than a 90% completion rate. Cold Memory knew this because the Tier 2 spell, Flame Spear, only generated a fire pillar on impact if the caster achieved a 90% completion rate or better. Not even Silk Moon, a domain realm expert, could accomplish the feat. However, of everyone in the venue, Silent Wonder was the most shocked to see this outcome. So, this is the power of a fragmented legendary weapon? Silent Wonder's heart pounded as she glanced at the brilliant silver in her hand. Shifeng had secretly passed her the weapon before she had walked onto the battlefield. She had nearly stumbled when she had seen the staff. A fragmented legendary weapon. The various superpowers constantly searched for such a weapon, and not even the Azure Chamber of Commerce had found one, yet Zero Wing had. She had seen many powerful epic weapons, but they weren't even in the same dimension as Brilliant Silver. Setting aside the staff's attributes, Brilliant Silver's passive skills made it far stronger than an epic weapon. Thanks to soul transition, she now possessed a Tier 3 soul, and as a result, her spells were much easier to cast. With the bonus to her mana body as well, she had more control over mana than ever before. Before the spectators could recover from their daze, the Dark Moon Beat charged at Silent Wonder again, giving the elementalist no time to prepare. The Grand Lord was clearly furious, and when it was only 30 yards from Silent Wonder, it jumped into the air and launched a mana-filled swipe at the young woman. A translucent pour of mana formed in the air, and many of the watching experts despaired. Not only was this pour incredibly fast, but it also covered a 20-yard radius. Dodging the attack would be utterly impossible. As the pour manifested, it contained enough power to rip apart space itself. If they were to receive such an attack, they'd be left without a body to bury. However, Before the mana pour could land, Silent Wonder waved her staff and cast Enchanted Ice Wall, and a crystalline wall appeared before her immediately. Boom! The battlefield trembled for a moment after the Dark Moon Bear's attack struck the ice wall, shaking the venue with the sound of a massive explosion. Impossible! How high are her attributes? Is she a monster? Everyone was flabbergasted as they stared at the ice wall, which only bore a few minor cracks. When Silent Wonder had stopped the Dark Moon Bear's first charge, they had been able to chalk it up to her luck, assuming she had simply struck a weak spot. However, they had no excuses for her performance in stopping the Dark Moon Bear's mana pour attack with her enchanted ice wall. And yet, they still couldn't believe what they were seeing. It was absurd to think a level 99, Tier 2 Elementalist could have the basic attributes to rival a level 100 Grand Lord. Nobody would believe this story. Impossible. How are her basic attributes so high? Yang Xiaoqian, who watched from outside the barrier, couldn't believe her eyes. Yang Xiaoqian's equipment definitely ranked among the very best in God's domain right now. Even the various superpowers domain realm monsters would likely be no match for her in this regard. However, she could only fight a level 100 High Lord at best, yet Silent Wonder stood her ground against a level 100 Grand Lord, 2 ranks higher than a High Lord. How could she possibly believe this was true? Even Cold Memory and South Dream were dumbfounded. Just what kind of guild is Zero Wing to enable a level 99 player to stand against a level 100 Grand Lord? Cold Memory and South Dream could not help but turn to look at Shifeng. They had never imagined that Zero Wing would have such a sturdy foundation. For a time, they were overwhelmed with curiosity about the guild. Zero Wing was merely a pseudo-superpower. It had already been amazing that Zero Wing's ability to nurture lifestyle players rivaled Dark Pursuit. Now, it proved that it could procure better weapons and equipment than what Dark Pursuit could get their hands on. It was utterly unbelievable. Everyone already realized that Silent Wonder would win this competition. If Silent Wonder could block the Dark Moon Bear's attacks, surviving for 10 minutes would not be difficult. In other words, she would earn the 20 sets of materials, whereas Silk Moon and Yang Xiaoqian would only have 6 sets each. Zero Wing, is it? Meanwhile, Duan Hanshan and Long Xianglong could not help but glance Shifeng's way. First, the man had received a friendly greeting from White Autumn, and now, Silent Wonder put on an outstanding display. Regardless of their personal feelings, Duan Hanshan and Long Xianglong had to take Shifeng seriously. Rather than focus on Zero Wing, the various superpowers were curious about Silent Wonder's equipment. Her equipment is definitely extraordinary if she can block a level 100 Grand Lord's attack at level 99. One wonder what kind of equipment she is wearing. The magic runes on her robes seem to match. I suspect she's wearing set equipment, but which set? If I could get my hands on a set like that, neither my Tier 3 promotion quest nor defeating field bosses would be a problem. For a time, the various superpowers experts watched Silent Wonder in envy. If they had such incredible set equipment, they could roam level 100 neutral maps without fear. Guild leader Black Flame, may I know what set equipment Miss Wonder is using? White Autumn curiously asked. It has gathered so much of the ambient mana. Naturally, he shared the same thoughts as the various superpowers. Such a set equipment would make killing field bosses in level 100 neutral maps so much easier. The set might even help him during his Tier 3 promotion quest. The Crimson Sunset, a Tier 2 advanced mana set equipment, Shifeng answered honestly. A Tier 2 advanced mana set equipment. White Autumn's breathing became excited. He had never realized that Zero Wing was this powerful. He had heard of mana set equipment before. It was top-tier set equipment that was even more powerful than Dark Gold set equipment, but mana set equipment was painfully rare in God's domain. Moreover, the higher the mana set equipment's tier was, the rarer it would be. As far as he knew, none of the various superpowers had a single complete Tier 2 mana set equipment, yet Zero Wing had a complete advanced mana set equipment. If he could equip Giant's Heart's Peak experts with the Crimson Sunset, they'd have a better chance of completing their Tier 3 promotion quests, as well. Vice Guild Leader White, are you interested in this Crimson Sunset? Shifeng asked. You jest, Guild Leader Black Flame. I doubt any player would turn away something like this, White Autumn said, a hint of envy and desire flashing in his eyes as he gazed at the crimson sunset silent wonder war. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU if you want one, Zero Wing has a few, Shifeng calmly stated. Zero Wing certainly needed the crimson sunsets, but it needed money more. Since a wealthy guild like Giant's Heart was willing to work with Zero Wing, Shifeng wouldn't mind selling the guild a few of the sets. Really? White Autumn was instantly excited about the prospect. How many sets can you sell? He had already witnessed the Crimson Sunset's effects. If he could get 2 or 3 sets for Giant's Heart, the guild's main force wouldn't have to worry about grinding in level 100 neutral maps, and he could challenge his Tier 3 promotion quest immediately. Zero Wing doesn't have many sets. Will 30 be enough? Shifeng asked after giving the matter some thought. Chapter 2366, Unexpected Harvest 30 sets? Chapter 2366, Unexpected Harvest 30 sets? White Autumn stared at Shifeng with wide eyes, utterly baffled. He would have already been impressed if Zero Wing could afford to part with 2 or 3 sets. After all, they were talking about advanced mana set equipment, which was far rarer and more valuable than level 95 Dark Gold set equipment. Yet, Shifeng had just offered to sell him 30 Crimson Sunsets. That's right, 30 sets, Shifeng said, chuckling at White Autumn's dazed expression. Each Crimson Sunset will cost 15,000 gold and 10,000 magic crystals. What do you think, Vice Guild Leader White? Although the Crimson Sunset was extremely valuable, each set could, at most, fetch him around 30,000 to 40,000 gold. He wouldn't make any profit if he only sold a handful of sets, but selling 30 at once would be a huge windfall for Zero Wing. Of course, he could auction off the Crimson Sunsets. He'd definitely earn more money from each set if he did, but he didn't want too many powers to get their hands on the equipment, helping their experts complete their Tier 3 promotion quests much sooner. Ultimately, that wouldn't benefit Zero Wing. So, a total of 450,000 gold and 300,000 magic crystals? White Autumn realized what Shifeng implied. Can I buy 100 sets, then? Even a fool could tell that Zero Wing had the ability to produce the Crimson Sunset. When White Autumn thought about the Crimson Sunset's potential mass production, he shuddered. Even if mass production wasn't possible, just being able to craft the sets was frightening. The fact that Zero Wing didn't want to share the Crimson Sunset with the various powers made this an excellent opportunity for him and Giant's Heart. If he could secure 100 Crimson Sunsets for Giant's Heart, not only could he satisfy his guild's experts who intended to challenge their Tier 3 promotion quests, but he could also arm the guild for exploring level 100 neutral maps. 100 sets. Shifeng rolled his eyes. Secretly, however, Giant's Heart's wealth shocked him. He said, producing the Crimson Sunsets is incredibly difficult and requires precious materials. At most, I can sell up to 50 sets, but the price will be different for that many. A handful of Crimson Sunsets wouldn't be overly helpful to a guild, but dozens of sets would be a different story. This was especially true as players began to reach level 100. The benefits of several dozen Crimson Sunsets were unimaginable. May I know how much you intend to charge? White Autumn asked, smiling. The price change didn't surprise him in the least. If you want 50 sets, it'll cost you a total of 900,000 gold and 600,000 magic crystals, Shifeng said after giving the matter some thought. If he had 900,000 gold, he would have enough capital to develop his territory in the Cold Spring Canyon. Meanwhile, with the 600,000 magic crystals, he could forge a new batch of Crimson Sunsets. All right, deal, White Autumn answered without hesitation. It might be a significant price increase, but 50 Crimson Sunsets would give Giant's Heart a massive edge over the other superpowers when it came to nurturing Tier 3 players and exploring level 100 neutral maps. White Autumn was confident these Crimson Sunsets would also help the guild compete with Pride Empire on land. White Autumn and Shifeng then signed an agreement. Even for a superpower, 900,000 gold and 600,000 magic crystals was a huge sum, and it would take White Autumn some time to collect the payment. Shifeng was quite satisfied. He hadn't expected his trip to the Dark Hills to net him so much gold and magic crystals. After this competition, he could turn his focus to the Cold Spring Canyon's development. Once he solidified his hold on the Cold Spring Canyon, Zero Wing wouldn't have to worry about contending with the various otherworld's invading powers. The guild's development speed might even reach new highs thanks to the canyon's resources. While Shifeng and White Autumn had been negotiating, Silent Wonder won the competition. Since the moment she had stepped onto the battlefield with the Dark Moon Bear, the competition's outcome had been decided. Yang Xiaoqian was a talented alchemist, but she had only earned 6 sets of materials to work with. In the end, she had only produced 3 bottles of meditation soul. Silent Wonder, on the other hand, had produced 6 bottles before she had even used all 20 material sets. Even though Silent Wonder had won by a landslide, the other members of the Azure Chamber of Commerce couldn't believe the outcome. Big Sis Jade, this is our chance. Now that Silent Wonder has won, the Long family has secured its rule over Azure. Naturally, Zero Wing will benefit from this, the blue-clad assassin beside Jade Bamboo said. Although we can't become members of Azure, we can ally with Zero Wing and use Azure's channels through the guild. With how intense the competition in God's domain is becoming, I doubt Zero Wing would turn us away. The Azure Chamber of Commerce had access to both of the main continents and had even more resources on hand than some super guilds. The Eastern continent's various superpowers were particularly eager to obtain resources from the Eastern continent. Meanwhile, the other world's various powers were rapidly expanding on the main continent. If Zero Wing collaborated with their Adventurer Alliance, the alliance could provide additional security for the guild. It was a benefit that many first-rate guilds and pseudo-superpowers needed but failed to acquire. All right. After the competition, I'll report the outcome to the Alliance Master, Jade Bamboo said, nodding. Meanwhile, Yang Xiaoqian stood on the competition grounds, still dazed. She had never dreamed that she would lose so miserably. I admit that I lost this time, Wonder, but you better not get complacent. Dark Pursuit's foundations are far more powerful than you can imagine. I will not lose the next competition between our families, Yang Xiaoqian declared, glaring at Silent Wonder. She then turned and left. The competition for the rights to rule Azure had ended, but the shareholding families held this competition each year to determine the strength and potential of the younger generation. After all, the children held the future in their hands. Yang Xiaoqian intended to use the next competition to recover from today's humiliation. Silent Wonder simply shook her head. She hadn't thought that Yang Xiaoqian would view her as a rival. Wonder, the competition is over. From now on, our Long family will be responsible for leading Azure in God's domain, Long Xianglong said as he approached Silent Wonder. Everyone has witnessed your talents. Return to the Western continent with me. You'll only be able to grow by training at the Chamber's main headquarters. The Eastern continent's legacies can't compare to those on the Western continent, and strength is everything in God's domain. You don't have to worry about Zero Wing. I'll give Zero Wing a large-scale shop in Demonstone Town. Not only will the guild be able to earn a significant amount of resources through the shop, but it will also have access to plenty of treasure from the Western continent. Silent Wonder's display had certainly shocked Long Xianglong. He hadn't realized that his niece was so powerful. She was just as talented in combat as Yang Xiaoqian. Although he had also been surprised to learn that Silk Moon had reached the domain realm, her health remained a problem. Unfortunately, Burning Owl couldn't lead the Long family to glory in the future alone. Hence, Silent Wonder's participation was absolutely necessary. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU Third Uncle. I already told you. I've decided to stay in Zero Wing, Silent Wonder insisted. Enough nonsense. With your talents, it won't be long before you become one of the Chamber's vice guild leaders. You'll have no issues becoming a Grand Elder in the future, either. You'll have a much better future with the Chamber than in a pseudo-superpower like Zero Wing, Long Xianglong argued. At this rate, you'll only ruin your prospect. As Silent Wonder tried to explain herself, everyone in the hall heard a deep voice. Elder Long, Silent Wonder is a genius, but I disagree that she'll ruin her future by staying in Zero Wing. Silence descended on the venue. No one had expected someone to be daring enough to refute Long Xianglong's statement, and everyone spun toward the speaker. The player that had interrupted the conversation between the Long family members was none other than Shifeng, who slowly approached Long Xianglong. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.